Li Fan pondered inwardly. You want me to visit the minor worlds? Could it be? Then he asked aloud. Why does fellow Taoist he wish for me to travel to the minor worlds? He Zhenghao went on. In reality, these minor worlds hold a decent amount of precious resources that can be traded for a substantial quantity of contribution points. However, collecting them solo is both lengthy and tiring, making it scarcely worthwhile. Still, the prominent and affluent mortals in these minor worlds are frequently keen to come back to the cultivation world, so… Li Fan had already figured out what He Zhenghao meant. So? He Zhenghao clarified. We can leverage this as an incentive to get those mortals to collect resources on our behalf. By chance, I am familiar with one such minor world named Greatly. It's rather expansive, yields various kinds of valuable treasures, and even contains a notable quantity of starseed drift sand. Starseed drift sand serves as a typical material for array formations, typically. One caddy is valued at 2 to 3 contribution points. Upon hearing this, Li Fan reflected inwardly. The minor world, smuggling, starseed drift sand. That immortal master partnering with Tianbao Pavilion for smuggling is truly He Zhenghao. He Zhenghao elaborated on the issue in detail, but he observed that Li Fan's gaze was becoming more and more peculiar, leaving him a bit uneasy. He quickly remarked. Don't stare at me that way. I know what's on your mind. How could a respectable cultivator stoop to something like this, right? But what you might not know, fellow Taoist, is that if you don't take on this sort of task, another person will. A single minor world collected from once every dozen years can produce over 2,000 contribution points. If you obtain a few more such worlds, it's like receiving 2,000 points without effort each year. It's straightforward. I simply need you to travel to the Li world on my behalf and retrieve some supplies that I had the locals there assemble a decade ago. Once we sell them, we'll divide the contribution points evenly. After considering it, Li Fan determined the task involved minimal risk. Gaining over 1,000 contribution points in 30 days greatly surpassed what most regular missions provided. Good, then I accept this task. He Zhenghao grinned contentedly and passed Li Fan a small wooden boat. He then took out a spirit talisman and gave it to Li Fan with evident reluctance. Some basic spell formations are inscribed in the small wooden boat. It is not as refined as the tie-in boat. The spirit talisman is a form-hiding talisman, which is stronger than the chi-concealing talisman, once activated. Not even a golden core cultivator can penetrate it. After departing Liuli Island, Li Fan traveled westward for 2 days as per He Zhenghao's instructions, heading directly to the Li world. Greatly, similar to Great Xian, was a mortal realm with generally comparable conditions, except for a huge volcano several kilometers tall at its center. This volcano erupted once every 2 to 3 centuries, and each eruption took countless lives. Even worse, the intervals between eruptions had shortened, and each event was more destructive than the last. The ruling elite of the Great Li dynasty lived in constant dread, fearing the day when the volcano would ultimately transform their entire world into a fiery hell. Driven by desperation, they relentlessly sought any possible means of escape. For years, they discovered nothing, until 50 years ago, when an immortal master arrived from the heavens. He proposed to transport a group of people out every decade, under one condition: they must collect the resources on his list. The nobles of Great Li readily consented. Thus, their exchange had continued for 5 decades. As Li Fan soared over the capital of Great Li, he heard bells tolling from below. Soon, the Emperor of Great Li, accompanied by his civil and military officials, arrived before Li Fan. Across the plaza, the Emperor and all his officials knelt together, their voices uniting as one. We humbly welcome the immortal master. Gazing down at them from his elevated position, Li Fan inquired coldly. The appointed day has arrived. Have you gathered the required materials? The Emperor of Great Li responded hastily. Reporting to the immortal master, all items on the list have been prepared and are ready for collection. Li Fan nodded. In that case, lead me to them. Thus, guided personally by the Emperor, Li Fan was taken to the Imperial Treasure Vault. Li Fan's divine sense swept across everything, and he nodded with satisfaction. Not only were all the materials there, but many surpassed the minimum quota. He stored the materials in the storage rings supplied by He Zhenghao. With that, this mission was successfully completed. everything proceeded smoothly, without any issues. Aside from the travel, the risk was essentially non-existent. Handing the wooden boat inscribed with arrays to the Emperor, Li Fan observed the man's face brighten with delight. Abruptly, Li Fan asked, "Is the Prince of Jinan in the capital today?" Handing the wooden boat inscribed with arrays to the Emperor, Li Fan observed the man's face brighten with delight. Abruptly, Li Fan asked, "Where is Xiaoheng, the heir to the Prince of Jinan? Take me to see him." Through the Emperor, he learned that Xiaoheng was currently being fostered at Scholar Su's home, so, under the Emperor's guidance, he arrived at Scholar Su's residence. Before long, Li Fan saw Xiaoheng at the Su residence. At this time, he was still just a child of 7 or 8 years old. Having suddenly been surrounded by so many strangers, his small face was tense. The small figure overlapped with the memory of Xiaoheng in his mind. And Li Fan let out a soft chuckle. He said abruptly, "I observe that this child possesses extraordinary talent. It will be a waste to confine him to such shallow waters." Then, Li Fan gently pointed a finger. Touching Xiaoheng's forehead, he transmitted the Xianhuang Heart Clarification Sutra and the methods for using its accompanying medicines directly into his mind. Li Fan swept his gaze over the crowd, his tone mild. "When I return in 10 years, I will personally take him away." Instantly, those who had been harboring crooked thoughts broke out in cold sweat, trembling with fear. The Emperor of Great Li naturally understood the meaning behind Li Fan's words and hurriedly promised, "Immortal Master, please be at ease. I will ensure he is well cared for." With matters in the Li world settled, Li Fan prepared to depart, but then, a young, pleading voice rang out from the crowd. "Immortal Master, I beg you, please save my sister." Li Fan soon found the source, a boy of perhaps 10 or 11, Su Changyu. A middle-aged man finally reacted, rushing forward and forcing the boy to his knees. What madness is this?" the man cried, dropping to his own knees and pressing Su Changyu's head toward the floor in a kowtow. "My son is a fool, I beg your forgiveness, Immortal Master." Li Fan remained silent. Panic seized the nobility. Following the Emperor's lead, they too dropped to their knees. Xiaoheng joined them in kowtowing as well. Slowly, he ventured, "Immortal Master, please, save Su Xiaomei." He thought to himself, "In the previous life, I heard Xiaoheng mention that Su Changyu had a sister suffering from a terminal illness. I had intended to check on the situation anyway." A long moment stretched before Li Fan finally spoke in a measured voice. "Very well, take me to her, but this will be the last such request." After a moment, Li Fan was led to the basement to see Su Xiaomei. On a small jade bed lay a newborn infant whose body appeared intensely feverish. Piles of ice surrounded the bed, and a maidservant constantly chipped fresh pieces to press against the child's scalding skin. He placed a hand on her fevered brow, channeling an infinitesimally fine thread of spiritual chi into her body. It circulated once, and returned to him. As it did, certainty dawned, and shock flashed across his features. "There's no trace of mortal miasma within her? And this constitution? The thread of spiritual chi I sent in was amplified after a single cycle?" He drew the thread back, coalescing it at his fingertip. The spiritual chi now pulsed with a searing heat, feeling utterly different from his own, yet it was not the consuming fire of crimson flame. This was different. Li Fan analyzed the energy at his fingertip for a long time before reaching a tentative conclusion. A strange look crossed his face, heat born of rage. He stared down at the slumbering infant, his expression inscrutable. Can this be the legendary innate immortal physique? And also heaven's envied?